Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Rethink Hong Kong. And I'm excited to kickstart this panel discussion that will be focusing on the future of sustainable advertising, with a special focus on Scope 3 emissions in the whole digital media ecosystem. Whether or not you're a CMO or a business owner of your brand, as long as you have some sort of digital presence, then your digital media strategy is likely going to be your Scope 3. So for this panel, we will be unpacking the science of Scope 3 emissions in the context of digital advertising, and also we'll be exploring some actionable strategies in terms of how you can decarbonize your digital advertising strategy. And before we dive right in, I would like to highlight that this discussion is proudly supported by Yahoo Finance and as part of their Yahoo Leaders Decode series. And with pleasure, joining me now are Jun Chang, Head of JPAC of Scope 3, as well as Roger Lee, the Senior Director of Yahoo Creative APAC. Please put our hands together to welcome our speakers. Now, to kick things off, obviously I would not like to assume everyone in the audience would understand what Scope 3 emissions really means, right? So June, could you please start off the conversation by telling us what really are Scope 3 emissions and why it matters in the context of digital media?
So when we talk about Scope 3 emissions, we're referring to the indirect emissions associated for that company. And that occurs inside the company's media supply chain. Specifically for advertising, what's unique about it, you have the choice of either going back to a supplier directly, so a one-to-one relationship, or alternatively, there's an auction process where we've seen up to 100 to 1,000 different vendors. So when it comes to Scope 3, the more suppliers you have your supply chain, the higher level emissions. What makes it challenging is that for a company, it represents a large component of your footprint. From the companies we speak to from advertising, it can range between up to 5 to 50% of their emissions. So it's a sizable impact. Until recently, emissions in digital advertising was invisible. Everyone thought that the digital ad happens on your computer, it all happens in the cloud. The cloud feels very abstract, it's not actually physical. But actually behind the cloud are football-sized fields of data centers that are running rows and rows of servers that are using a lot of energy. And those computers running create a lot of heat, and then you need air conditioning to cool those centers down. So it's a huge amount of energy required from the energy grid, and as a result, emissions impact.
Absolutely, and like you mentioned, Scope 3 is referring to indirect emissions across the value chain of all the companies. Every company has Scope 3 emissions, but it's just because of, the challenge is really because they all have very unique and complex value chain, so it's kind of a bit hard to keep track of many of them. And according to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, we obviously got Scope 1, which is direct emission on-site from the company's operations. Scope 2 would be indirect emissions, which would be energy use purchased by the companies. But today we are focusing on Scope 3, which is kind of everything else, right? But to help us understand this a little bit better in the context of digital advertising, Roger, I would like to bring you in. Obviously, you're an expert in the field, speaking more from like a marketing and advertising perspective. Could you please walk us through how the industry works, the process of how brands buy their media placements and ads?
Sure. So I think the audience here are not necessarily very understand a lot about the digital advertising. So I think my aim here is to share a little bit more on like how the ways that you can buy advertising through all these different channels. And traditionally there are two channels, and one is more a direct channel. So some may call it direct IO or direct buy. So essentially, this is a process between the buyer and seller. So the buyer could be an advertiser or an agency, ad agency, and the seller could be a publisher like us. So it is a process between two parties in order for them to place ads into the media. So usually this approach is more manual, but the outcome usually would have a better premium media offering, or sometimes could have a little bit more creativity in there because you can control more on what exactly to place in the ad. versus the other part of the process, which is what we call programmatic buying. So programmatic buying usually involve a series of different system and platform, which are mostly automated, and it would require a lot of different data in order for informing the platform to make decision for buyer where to place an ad. So usually this approach would be more cost effective because it would involve less of the manual effort, but it will require a lot more technology in the process to make decision. So these are the two main streams nowadays for digital advertising.
Mm-hmm. So we got programmatic and direct buy.
Right.
I mean, you've been in the industry for a very long time, Roger. I'm pretty sure when you first started off in the industry, like how to think about carbon emissions from media buying was not part of the conversation, right?
Not at all. Not at all.
So my next question for you would be like, what role can marketers really play these days in reducing carbon emissions for their digital media strategy?
Obviously, marketers play an important role when we talk about carbon emission, ESG, all of this purpose. And especially nowadays, the technology would allow us to be more conscious about carbon emission when we execute a digital advertising project. So back in the day, like 10, 20 years ago, we were totally blind, or basically no one had thought about carbon emission at all. But given the fact that ESG is so important, carbon emission is a big mission for everyone, marketers clearly play an important role to rethink, which is today's theme, how they are executing their project or campaign such that it can make a better impact to the world, of course. So given the fact that nowadays there are a lot of technologies, in fact, that like Scope 3, that can tell us how much carbon emission, how much carbon footprint out of the entire campaign execution that for your advertising project. So marketers need to be more aware about carbon emission at this stage and to start using technologies to measure the carbon emission, and they would need to then look at how to optimize their campaign so to reduce all these different greenhouse gas. So I think this is something that marketers can do and play a role in here.
Absolutely. It's a very complex issue to solve as well, because when it comes to the scope 3 of digital advertising, we can think about upstream like data centers, network infrastructure, and also downstream in the sense of like everyday users. How do we access these ads when we are scrolling through social media, TikTok, how we are accessing these ads and the energy that it uses, right? So I would like to turn back to June when it comes to scope 3 reporting, measurement, data availability, accuracy are all key challenges. So from your perspective, just now we talked about two major media buying options. What are the differences in terms of carbon emissions between the two options? And from scope 3, this is what you do, like tracking scope 3 emissions, right, of digital ad campaigns. How do you make sure your measurement and methodology are also credible enough to support different companies' ESG reporting?
100%. So when we started looking at emissions in advertising, there was no one doing it. And from the very start, we made the decision to make our methodology open source. And that helps build credibility. And we also invited competitors, advertisers, industry associations to get involved and reviewed and evaluated together. So we started by putting out the numbers out there, because if you never do it, it's invisible and people just ignore it and don't take the first step. But when you start realizing how big it is and people see you measuring, they're like, oh, why should you be doing it? And we're like, no, it's not us, it's open source. We invite peer review. So it was very exciting to see last year that the industry association got together all the competitors put their tools down to go, well, it's not about being competitive, it's about finding a standard for us to all understand from. So now we have the Global Media Sustainability Framework that's supported by the biggest world advertisers and also AdNet Zero as a industry association, which it builds the credibility, and Scope 3 is really proud to be the company that started it all, but also a main contributor moving forward.
Right, and my next question, I would like to bring in both Roger and June, more from Roger from the more digital marketing perspective and June from the performance perspective, because some might argue that programmatic advertising is becoming a major trend for marketers. So how should brands really balance traditional performance metrics with carbon efficiency? Who would like to take this first?
Maybe I'll go first because I had some slides prepared because I explained that Scope 3 is the indirect emissions and it's the middleman, the supply chain. And up here is kind of a bad example where you have your inventory on one side, which is your publisher, and your ads on the others. And you can see all the different acronyms, but basically they're just different ad tech vendors or partners that makes that decision. So lots of people involved, creates carbon, creates inefficiency. And what we find that high carbon sites are generally correlated with lower quality inventory. And you can see here, we see they're generally made for advertising. So have you ever been to a site where all of a sudden there's 20 ads and you can't actually see the content? And you actually question, is that actually real content? That's made for advertising site that exists in the auctioning environment that's actually siphoning media dollars, marketing investment, but not necessarily reaching the real eyeballs. So to answer, long-winded way of answering your question is carbon is a signal for you to help discover, improve your performance of your campaigns.
Right. So in fact, I think we have done some tests to answer your question earlier for programmatic. We also want to understand better if programmatic could be better. So that's why in one of our in-house campaign, we ran a test to look at if we place ad through programmatically, and if we place ad just go directly to our own media, in this case, then what could be the carbon emission outcome? So what we realized that there is a big difference. Since this is Scope 3 expertise area, what if I would let June you explain a little more the result?
Yeah, of course.
Coming from our test.
Apologies with the little symbol there, but you can see with the way you buy Yahoo, you don't buy it through an auction process, you buy direct through the team. It means there's no kind of technical providers in the middle. So you can see here they're at 54 grams of carbon per 1,000 impressions. So 1,000 impressions is kind of the standard advertising language of how many ads you buy. On the other hand, when you look at programmatic, it's a very inefficient supply chain. There's lots of players in the middle. They're spinning up computers to answer that decisioning. They're siphoning kind of media dollars into their own pockets. But also the worst thing is that they're creating carbon. So the 887 grams of carbon per 1,000 impressions, that's a 16 times difference and a huge impact. Roger touched upon this in his previous answer. It's the quality of the content that matters as well. So using carbon, you can see like this site here, like I went to find it as an example, 3 ads and I can't even see the words. So, and also questionable where that inventory is coming from versus Hong Kong, Yahoo Hong Kong owned and operated content has premium, written journalist content. It has premium creative formats. It really makes a difference from a marketer's and from a performance perspective. And I guess the key takeaway from this session is like, be aware of it. If you work with your marketing team, let them know that's like something to look at and evaluate moving forward.
I think the key here is about how we optimize the supply eventually. So like in the earlier slide, you saw lots of boxes from buy side to the sell side, while if you go direct, then all of these intermediaries can be eliminated. So the whole point here is just about how we optimize for better, more efficient way to place that so that eventually we can achieve the goal to eliminate more carbon dioxide footprint. And one of the reasons why we can achieve a much better result for the carbon footprint emission is because we can have full control, basically. When we place ad directly to a publisher, we can have full control where to place, the amount we want to place, the creative we want to place, especially on the creative, which is also another important area of my job here in Yahoo. So we can actually optimize the best creative to place into the website, into the publisher. Just take a very simple example for a video. So video actually consume a lot of bandwidth. So it could be very high density, but in reality, in an ad, it doesn't require to show a very high density video. So in this case, we could have full control in order to optimize the actual creative to place into the media, so to achieve even much more improvement in terms of the carbon footprint emission. Yeah. So this is a way, in my opinion, that we can help marketers look at reducing the carbon footprint by giving them solution. So I think this is also the future, especially like scope 3. I would expect more technology like that help us to optimize the wastage through the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. So from what I'm hearing is that obviously being more intentional about where you place your ads could be one way to decarbonize your digital media strategy. And at the same time, direct buying, just now the chart that you were showing, like direct buying, you're basically accounting for the carbon footprint perspective, the emissions from your direct source where you're buying from. But the other programmatic option, you are accounting for the emissions from all of those suppliers. Now, we have a few more minutes left in this discussion, so I would like to ask a more forward-looking question. Like, in a broader sense, what do you see the future of advertising would look like in parallel to this growing pressure for, ESG reporting and sustainability commitments?
Let me take it first, okay. So in my opinion, I would take an analogy like a lot other technology evolution. So for transportation, right? So in the past, that not even you have a smartphone on your hand that you don't really know where you are and you have to go to somewhere. So it could based on your experience, or you have to find your own way, which eventually will take a lot of your time and energy to get a place from A to B. So this is very not efficient, right? While when GPS introduced, smartphone introduced, that you got more data now, so that you know how to get the shortest distance from A to B, or even in the future, which actually we already at that time that have electric car that could be connected to internet, that not only the shortest distance, but you can connect with other smart devices to further optimize the whole journey. So this is just an analogy, in my opinion, in order to tackle how we combat reducing carbon emissions. So like in the past, that we don't have any technology to place ads, so you are basically blindly. This is like back in the day that we have totally no visibility. But now we have more data that you can target the audience, right? So you can reduce wastage to not to show the ad to someone you do not have interest. To future that you have more technology, just like electric car, that you probably have more granularity on like where are the carbon hotspots when placing ad. Could that be creative? Would that be one part of the ecosystem that's using too much energy that you can actually identify and reduce and eliminate it? So eventually it's to optimize even better in terms of the footprint, the emission. So I would foresee there will be more and more technology, especially like AI, that is giving us a lot of chances to place ad even more and even smarter. So eventually achieving even a better goal for reducing carbon footprint. So that's the future that I would foresee, especially AI will play an important role there.
That was such a comprehensive answer. I'm not sure how to counteract that. But I'm going to take like a practical point of view with the current economic climate. In all industries, including marketing, you're pressured. You're pressured to deliver more with less and drive efficiency. Sustainability often is thought as an afterthought. But as we've seen today, like by looking under the hood, Roger's point of getting data, it gives you insight to take action. So looking forward, I'm excited to see that as marketers drive efficiency, they can look towards different businesses and opportunities, including sustainability, to go, how can I include it to make it better for the planet, but also better for the business bottom line as well.
I see. So the future is looking like more data-driven decisions to align with companies' sustainability commitments. And sadly, we're running out of time, but I just want to quickly ask if there are any questions for our panelists. We might have a little bit of time for 1 or 2 questions if you want. Yes, please.
Thank you, guys. My name is Cedric from 55 Data Consultancy. Historically, media agencies have been incentivized on reach. Do you finally see a shift in terms of KPIs as well, or in your discussion with media agencies and CMOs probably as well?
I think it's, it's really driven by the brand and the company. So we've seen the biggest global brands sign the World Federation of Advertisers Planet Pledge, who have said, yes, this is important to our business, to our marketing strategy, and that cascade down to the agency. But it's always going to be a balance between reach, business metrics, and then sustainability. But with the Yahoo example here, we've kind of seen, just doing kind of the comparison, there is carbon savings and also efficiency to be gained from it.
Great. Any other questions? If not, we're going to wrap up the panel here. Once again, I would like to thank June Chang from Scope 3 and Roger Lee from Yahoo for this engaging panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Isabel, June, and Roger, for your insights. If you would like to continue the conversation with our speakers, they will be available at the networking lounge. We'll now take a break, but please come back at 1:55 as we'll be continuing the dialogue here with a focus on fostering a holistic approach to wellness and social impact within the workplace and the community, and will emphasize the role of sport in promoting mental health and enhancing community well-being.